Today, guys, I'm going to be going over how I became one of the top players inside of Roblox Bedwars and show you how to do it as well. Also, subscribe. Now, the first thing you guys can do to actually think like one of the best players in the game is knowing when to play passive versus when to play aggressive. Now, basically, what this means is basically just knowing when to fight your opponents. For example, if your opponent has just engaged in a fight with you and he is using a bow, say, for example, he has a crossbow and you have leather armor. If he's doing 30 damage to you, he only needs 3 more hits to actually finish you off. So you'll know to play more passive then, because you know your opponent does heaps of damage and you don't want to engage in that fight just yet. By playing passive basically just means that you stay as far away from your opponent as physically possible. Whether that be building a wall, hiding behind any sorts of structures, or just running away with a teleport. You want to play super passive if your opponent is outgearing you. But if you're on the opposite end and you're actually dealing 30 damage to your opponents, then you'll know to play super aggressive, because you'll know that in 3 more hits, you're going to kill your opponent. So if you play super aggressive and rush instantly, then you'll be able to get a nice kill on your opponent, stealing all of their resources. A lot of players play like this. They switch between a passive and aggressive, and they just know when to play their cards right. Bad players will often just rush everyone instantly without, they just will be like, oh my god, why am I dying so much? I'm rushing and I'm getting all these combos. But no, you gotta know when to play passive as well. You can't just keep playing aggressive all the time. And the same goes for passive players, all right? They may just be sticking at their base all game, not actually contributing to the game at all, and they'll just end up getting outgeared by that sweaty nerd who has 30 emeralds in his personal chest. So yeah, switch between the 2 playstyles, know which one is best for the situation. Anyways, guys, the next best strategy that some of the top players use, actually, I think every single top player uses this strategy, and that is budgeting resources. Now, guys, literally every single top player is not just randomly buying the most random crap in the shop, all right? They are strategically buying the things that they need to win the game / fight. For example, if you have a 50 iron in your inventory, there is a few different loadouts that you can get at the start of the game. You can either blow it all on leather armor and have a 0 blocks to your name, or you can either buy a stone sword and a few blocks. Now, I'm going to be going on to which one to pick later in the video, but basically, you need to decide which loadout is best for your situation. You can't be going around buying leather armor if your opponent has a ton of blocks. You need to budget accordingly, because if your opponent has leather armor and a stone sword, you can do the exact same amount of damage to your opponents. And if you have a few blocks as well, you can actually build up and get a nice sneaky combo on your opponents. So make sure you budget accordingly. Don't spend all of your iron on blocks, fireballs, or gloops. Don't blow all of your check on one item. This is a very, very important in ranked, okay? If you are blowing resources, especially emeralds, on loot that you know that you're gonna lose, you're gonna end up losing the game simply because you're just draining all of those resources that you could be using later in the game to fortify your bed defense or win the game. Anyways, guys, let's talk about another really important strategy that the top players use, and even myself, I use this quite a lot as well, and that is using third person to actually hit crossbow shots. Now, there is a reason why third person is the most ideal for crossbow shots, and that is because you get the whole screen to yourself and you can free roam your mouse. If you are restricting yourself to just the front of your player, you're going to end up missing a lot more shots simply because you're looking at head height. If you're looking at third person, you can actually adjust the angle to which is the best fit for your situation, making it a lot easier to actually hit shots on your opponents and a lot easier to generally just see your enemies. A lot of mediocre players just tend to sit in first person because it's what they're most comfortable with, but if you can get really good at aiming in third person, you're going to be much better than anyone playing in first person. I can promise you that. The only time you should be in first person is when you are PvPing someone, so you can get the most optimal hits. And that's when tracking is involved, all right? You don't need to track with the crossbow. It is a one-hit projectile. You just need to lead the shot and aim in front of your opponent. Anyways, guys, let's move on to the next best strategy that a lot of top players are using, and that is be aware of your surroundings and don't be a tunnel vision. Now, basically, what I mean by this, all right, is don't just focus on one thing. You need to have your mind concentrating on the whole map. You need to look at what everyone's doing. If you're sitting there focused on one person, if I'm rushing white right now and I'm only focusing on what white is doing, that gives literally everyone else in the game the perfect opportunity to third party and rush me. And I'm not going to expect it. I'm going to be like, what? This guy's third partying me. He's so trash. But if I actually take a look at my surroundings and just notice that someone is about to third party, I know then to disengage and just let them two fight it out, and then I can be the one to third party. Just doing those little simple things just make the game a lot easier to play. Having those mental notes in your head and not just focusing on one situation is going to make it a lot easier for you to just be a lot more aware of your surroundings and to win more games. Honestly, guys, if you're not doing this strategy, you're missing out on a ton of potential. Anyways, guys, if you made it this far into the video, all right, I'm going to tell you guys a little secret about some kits, okay? If you're early to this video, if you've made it this far into the video, if you've liked this video, you've subscribed, you can actually get yourself a free kit. If you comment your username down below with what kit you want, I'm going to be sliding a ton of you guys some kits. Anyways, guys, this next strategy, honestly, I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's not going to be available to everyone, all right? It's only going to be available to a select few people, but I do have an alternative to the strategy that I'll go over in a second. Anyways, guys, I'm talking about using a ultra-wide monitor. Now, I'm sure you guys will know what I mean when I say that this is not accessible to everyone, all right? This is only going to be accessible for people that have a lot of money to spend on a monitor or that already have an ultra-wide monitor. But basically, using a ultra-wide monitor, I'll put a screenshot of what my Bedwars looks like right now. Basically, it just gives you extra FOV, and it is really overpowered. You can essentially just get a much better view of the game. I'm able to see a lot more than what all of my enemies are able to see, purely because I have an ultra-wide monitor, and I'm able to see what's going on all around the map. And then combine this with every single strategy that I've walked through with you guys, and you'll just become an absolute monster. And that is why that you don't see like my kill feed or anything like that, or any of my UI on the side. It's actually because it's being covered up by my monitor. So if you wanted to know the difference between a normal monitor and my monitor, you can literally see it in the footage. But if you don't have an ultra-wide monitor and you don't have a bucket load of money to spend on one, you can actually just go into settings and increase your FOV to 100. And this will just increase the field of view that you guys can see. It'll basically just give you a lot more reach. You'll be able to see so much more. And even though it's not as good as playing on an ultra-wide monitor, it still gives you a good enough advantage to see other people around the map. And honestly, guys, I cannot remember a time where a game has not had an FOV slider, okay? It's probably one of the most useful things in the game, and I would crank it up to the max. I would use the absolute maximum FOV possible so I can see as much as possible. Anyways, guys, let's move on to the next strategy that I have for you guys that you guys can learn actually right now, and that is game sense, all right? A lot of Bedwars players don't know any game sense. They have zero game sense. They're just mindlessly wandering around doing nothing. And that's honestly what I see between a good player and a bad player, okay? I know when I'm versing a good player because I can actually visually see that they have good game sense. They're interpreting my moves. They are predicting and countering my moves before I even make them. And then I am predicting and countering their moves before they even make theirs. It's honestly really satisfying to actually verse someone who is a half-decent player because it actually brings for some long, intense fights. And if you're anticipating your opponent's moves, if you're guessing what they're going to do next, is going to make you a much better player. Because the more accurate that you get those predictions, the better player you're going to become. And this honestly just comes with practicing and playing the game. It's not something you can just pick up instantly with the snap of your fingers, okay? It's something that you learn and develop over time. To further improve on your game sense so you can actually watch other good players, more tips and tricks videos like the ones I have on my channel, by the way, if you want to check those out. I'm just saying, you know, you'll slowly pick up on everything and become a better and better player, and your game sense will become better as well. Watching good players that are definitely better than you will help you improve a ton. The next best strategy is that all of the pro players definitely use 100% of the time, and that is changing the playstyle based on how the game is going. Now, I'll just give you a clear-cut example of what I mean by this. Okay, picture this. You got absolutely demolished at the start of the game, all right? You just got wiped out. Your opponent is destroying you, but you somehow managed to get a ton of blocks and your bed is gone. You're gonna have to switch up your playstyle because you cannot play like you have infinite lives anymore. You have to be a little bit more passive aggressive and a little bit more careful with how you play. You can't just go rushing everyone, destroying them, getting into every PvP fight, because you're going to lose eventually, especially if you make a mistake. If you have no bed and you have a lot of blocks, play a little bit more passively. Just get some resources, get geared up, and then go ahead and take those fights once you're a little bit more overpowered. And then obviously, if you do have a bed and you know that you're absolutely stacked out, you can just go rush everyone, destroy everyone, get them out of the game, make them cry to their mom because they got absolutely destroyed. I'm sure you get the idea, right? Change your playstyle based on how the game is going. If you know there are a ton of sweaty tryhards in your server, you obviously have to play a little bit more careful and strategic, because your enemies are actually not mindless NPCs and they actually know what they're doing. Anyways, guys, I'm going to be talking about another thing that is really crucial to becoming the best player in this game, and that is reaction time, okay? Reaction time is probably one of the most important things in the game. And if you get really immersed in Bedwars, okay, if you play a lot of ranked, you'll notice that something called your flight or fight response kicks in. Basically, your reaction time just improves by 1,000,000%. Like, it becomes super good. And that's when you see the pro players, they make their super cool flicks and really quick reactions because their fight or flight response kicked in. And the better that you are at reacting quickly to your opponent's moves and kicking in that fight or flight response, you'll be able to just destroy so many more opponents because your reaction time will be on point. You can actually test your reaction time right now. If you just search up reaction time test on Google, try it out, and if you can get below 200 milliseconds, you qualify enough to be a proper ranked player.